we will begin. So maybe we will begin. Maybe we won't. Oh, there we go. All right. So as Christina mentioned, I own a company called Catera where we help creatives to be seen and heard. We believe values plus brand equals culture. We partner with musicians, businesses, entrepreneurs, politicians, and creatives. And I'll add, some might wonder, well, how does a resume workshop fit into that? And the truth is, your resume is a part of your professional brand. And oftentimes, before folks see you, if you don't have an actual relationship with the place that you're applying to be at, this is their first time really engaging with you. And so it is important if you are somebody who is in the space of looking for employment. Today's learning objectives, we'll discuss the difference between functional and chronological. Talk about combining LinkedIn and your resume, and so how that looks. And we'll also determine which resume might be best for you. So resumes, enhancing what is already there. Look, we're all skilled, we're all capable, but how do we articulate that? So in my workshops, I also tell lots of personal stories. So when I think back to a time when I was unemployed, I remember I worked on my resume, but I sent out the exact same resume to over 50 places. And it was difficult with the format of my resume to really ascertain what skill sets I actually had. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But essentially, I couldn't understand why people weren't calling me back. And that was really frustrating because I knew I was qualified for these jobs that I was applying for. A few things to consider about your resume when you're putting it together. So as you're looking at yours right now, one, your current resume is a baseline. So this is what I did not know when I was applying for all of these jobs, is that sending the exact same resume to every place of employment was not the move. It just wasn't a good look. And part of that reason is a lot of companies use a filtering process. So some type of HR system that is scanning your resume for keywords. And so if you're sending the exact same resume to everybody, there's a very good chance that some of those keywords that appear in the job description are not in your resume. And so you may already get kicked out as a result. The other thing is each job, even if it's the same industry or the same occupation, the things that they're looking for are going to be a little bit nuanced. And so you're going to want to make sure, again, that you can clearly articulate what the place of employment is looking for. So again, you may have a resume right now. You may be looking at it right now. That is a baseline because you're going to modify that a little bit for every job you apply for. That said, though, your baseline resume is what you're using for job profile sites, for LinkedIn, and we'll talk a bit more about that too. Resumes should be about that action. All that means is use verbs. And so when you look at my resume, I have two examples of my resume in this document. In the first one that we'll look at, you'll see that I didn't use verbs, action words at the beginning of the sentences. And so it reads different when you add that. But again, that's just really important to do. Instead of saying did X amount of workshops, facilitated X amount of workshops. And what do your numbers say? So anytime you're able to add numbers to qualify or quantify what you've done, you're going to want to do that. Whether it's on average seen X amount of patients in an hour, or had an accuracy rate of such and such percent, engineered 100 podcasts, completed 1,000 hours of blank training. Anytime you can add a number, do that, because it speaks to your qualifications and it sounds very different from completed a resume workshop. Let's talk a little bit about the differences between functional and chronological. Now, I'll say the other thing. I've always had a background in music, writing, but as you might imagine, not super easy to find those jobs in Milwaukee. So I've also always had some type of administrative, clerical job that was pretty easy for me because I had this journalism background. But I also had like three different resumes. I had my administrative clerical one. I had something that just spoke to all of my experiences in journalism and music marketing. And then I had like a hybrid, but they were all chronological. And so, what functional resumes allowed me to do is focus on the skill sets that I had from these collective industries that I worked in. So, in my chronological resume, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me do this. So functional, it emphasizes skill sets and skill groupings. So for me, some of the things that I often like to talk about is my branding background, marketing background, project management, um, marketing and public relations background. And that changes depending on what type of job I'm applying for. So if I'm applying for a facilitator job, you're going to see facilitation somewhere in there. If I'm applying for something that requires some volunteer management or recruitment, you're going to see that as one of the skill sets or skill groupings in my resume. It can be used for individuals who have worked in a variety of industries. Again, that was me. This was the key tool that helped me bring all of those industries together. I knew I didn't want to continue working in the administrative clerical space, but I also didn't want to discount all of the experience that I gained from that. So the key was finding a way for me to bring my journalism and music experience together with my administrative clerical work and how to put it in a document that made sense and made me look well rounded. So I was definitely somebody who was looking to move permanently into a new industry. So to move from this administrative clerical space to move into something that aligned with the work I ultimately saw myself doing. But this can also be used for individuals with little or no work experience. So when I worked in workforce development, and we would have individuals come in who had little to no work experience, we focused on a functional resume and really focused on, again, those skill sets. Now, part of the struggle with a functional resume is that for some employers, it may be difficult to read. Everyone is not using functional resumes yet. If you're somebody who's on LinkedIn, and I hope that you are, LinkedIn's format for entering your resume does not currently allow for functional. It's still using a chronological resume format as well. And of course, if you are uploading onto job sites, so Ideal, or not Ideal, goodness gracious, Indeed or Monster, if that's still around, this is not going to be as helpful. But that does not mean you should not have a functional resume if you fit into one of these categories. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Chronological. So chronological resumes are great for folks who have uninterrupted work experience in a specific industry. That, again, was not necessarily me. The one thing that saved me is that I've owned my company for about 10 years, even though I wasn't always making money off of it. And so that filled in some of the gaps in my resume in terms of work history. So those times where I was choosing not to work at a traditional job and to kind of give a little bit more attention to the business. It focuses on work history and not skill set. So it's the chronological order of where have you been, what have you done. Now, something that I want to note here is that regardless to whether you do a chronological, functional, or you're like me and have both, you're gonna want to make sure that you're still using numbers whenever you can to substantiate your work and your background. You're still going to want to start off with verbs as often as you can in these bullet points. And you're also going to want to make sure that you remember that it's a baseline. So you're still going to modify it a little bit every time you apply for a job. And certainly I've had to do that with my functional resume. Employers, as I mentioned, are most comfortable with this format. And again, it is best for uploading to career or job placement sites. I like using my functional resume when I love when I'm applying for a job and it asks me to just email. So email a cover letter, email your resume. I love that because that means I can use my functional resume, which is what I love using. All right. So if you haven't done so already, get your resume out because we are going to start taking a couple points from there. Now, what I did was I started with my functional resume because I really wanted to practice with that. I built out the functional resume, so the points that I, kind of wanted to play around with and create my baseline resume. Another space where I use my baseline is if I have a friend or a colleague say, hey, I know about this job that's opening. Can you send me your resume? If that person is not able to send me a job description, and sometimes they can't, sometimes they don't have access to it, that's when I send my baseline resume, whether it's chronological or functional. But remember, if you can get access to the job description, get access to the job description so that you can spruce up that resume a little bit. So as promised, I would be showing you a version of my resume. And so this is an older example of one of my functional resumes. And as I was saying, I started off with my functional resume, and then I created my chronological. And I'm using the same bullet points. Same bullet points that are on my functional are somewhere on that chronological as my baseline. It's somewhere on my LinkedIn as well as my baseline resume. So the two key areas here that I'll point out are training and technology social media. So few things, you don't need more than 5 to 6 bullet points. So whether you're doing chronological or functional, no more than 5 or 6, no less than 3. So if you have something on your resume, a skill set that you really want to talk about, if you don't have at least 3 bullet points, I would suggest not using that. So here you see participant test scores increased on average by 26%. That just feels clunky. There's probably a better way I could have done that. Volunteer facilitator for Wibbick and Kingmaker series, able to facilitate in lecture format or participant engagement. Trained other facilitators on how to facilitate using company methodology. Would have been great if I included what that company methodology was. Coordinated staff training to ensure consistency. How many folks? How often did I do that? Down here for technology and social media, proficient in both Microsoft Office suites and Google Docs. Probably a better place for that, maybe under technology used or applicable technologies able to use or something like that. I could have put that under there. Comfortable with PowerPoint and Google Slides. Again, something that could be combined with that top one. Extremely comfortable marketing and promoting through various social media platforms. Currently administrator of various Facebook pages. Might have been cool to list what they were, just in case folks wanted to fact check my work. Familiar with database management platform, Convio, including importing and exporting files, and able to create interactive presentations, which is kind of covered, as I've mentioned, Microsoft Office twice and Google Docs twice, right? So That section, those two sections definitely needed some work. So here's what the new one looked like. And this is actually part of my current resume. So selected achievements and skills, brand development and management, created branding campaigns for independent artists. I listed those folks. Secured sponsorship for independent label Off the Block Entertainment, an Unleashed Showcase. Assisted in developing marketing plans for nonprofit organizations to create visibility. Helped Tape Benders, which is a rock band that I managed, enter 196 on the top 200 CMJ charts. That was a pretty cool accomplishment for us because we did not have a label backing us. So it was just 4 guys from Cudahy and me. Workshop presentations. So received basic facilitator certification through ResCare. Facilitated approximately 1,248 hours of roadmaps to success professional development workshop. Now, that is a pretty compelling number, whether it's $1,248, 1,248 seconds, 1,248 ink pens, like whatever it is, 1,248 sounds like a lot. Average post-assessment score of job seekers upon completion is 90%. So that means everybody, on average, everybody who left my workshop had an A, a low A. And then again, you see this bullet point that reappeared. Volunteer facilitator for WIBIC and Kingmaker series. Created and presented Mythical Land of On, which is an entrepreneur workshop for True School. So that was a custom piece that I put together for them. Project management. Created and planned logistics for college promotional tour for You Heard magazine. Coordinated a team of 20 people for live music performance, including stage design, live orchestra, and then I put the duration of the project, 4-month project. And so so what does this look like on my chronological resume? On my chronological resume, what you see is the job. Each of these tasks here connect with an actual job worked. I did this for a company, whether it was my company, whether it was ResCare, whether it was You Heard magazine, all of this was done in relation to a company. So on my chronological resume, what you'd see is the job I worked for, some of these bullet points. The next job I worked for, some of these bullet points. In terms of selected achievements or skill sets highlighted, I probably wouldn't do more than 4 to 5. So, if you have something like project management, I only have 2 here. So I may have added in another skill set at the bottom that had, again, between 3 and 5, right? This is only 2 bullet points, but it kind of looks like 3 because it's multiple lines. So I would have squozed in something else for 3 to 5 bullet points to give that some balance, or found another bullet point to add under project management, if that's what the job was calling for. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't. All right, it's your turn. And so in a typical workshop for me, this is when I would be able to go around and I'd be able to check your resume and see what it looks like. And we'd be able to go in person and kind of like workshop a bullet point item together. So I'll just ask quickly if anybody has any questions about a bullet point on their resume. I believe you can send the question to Christina, and then I can kind of answer it that way. So any questions so far?
Hi, this is Christina. Yeah, anyone can just enter it into the chat box. So Kennita, we have someone asking, how long do you recommend resumes to be? How long should they be?
Honestly, shouldn't be more than 2 pages. It shouldn't be. You should be able to get everything in there in 2 pages. Here's the other thing I'll mention about resumes too. In terms of work history and education, anything that's older than 10 years don't include. So we're moving into 2021. So anything between 2011 and 2021 is applicable. That includes volunteer experience, that includes education. And so, yes, I know you're super excited about all your degrees, but all of them don't have to go on the resume at this point. And so, yeah, 1 to 2 pages. Because keep in mind, too, you'll also be submitting some version of a cover letter. So, yep, 1 to 2 pages. If you can get it on one, that's great. If you're doing multiple skill sets, which you should be, at least, again, 4 to 5, 3 to 5. So, if you have 3 skill sets you really want to highlight, 5 bullet points each, that's of course going to give you a little bit more space at the bottom. And that is where you actually enter in the chronological work order. So the top will be your skill sets, and then the bottom is I worked for NPL from this date to this date. This was my title. And then I worked at Target this date to this date, and this was the title. And I worked at, and so it's just name of the business you worked at, title, so what was the job you had, or what was the role you last had, and the dates. And there's quite a few formats that you can find online to help you, both in Microsoft Suites and in Google Docs. And I actually used a template in Google Docs to help me get mine together. And thank you for that question. All right. So cover letter. So I had intended to show an example of a cover letter that I did. And so for those of you who came early, you saw me fiddling around and kind of trying to figure that out. It didn't work out though. So as I indicated here, cover letters are really important real estate. And if you're like me, you've used your cover letter to repeat what's on your resume. It is my professional opinion that that is not the best way to use your cover letter. If it's a situation where you are emailing your resume and your cover letter, you can actually use your cover letter in the body of the email. So versus saying, hi, this is Kennita applying for librarian position at Milwaukee Public Library. Please see attached to find my cover letter and resume and letter of references. You could instead just use the email body to do the cover letter and then attach your resume and if they're asking whatever other materials they're asking for. So if you're not repeating your resume in your cover letter, what are you actually talking about? So anybody want to give a guess in the chat? We've got time. Anybody want to give a guess as to what you could be talking about in this important piece of real estate that is your cover letter? It says someone's talking, so a question is coming, so I'm just going to wait. I don't want to spoil the surprise.
While we're waiting, Kennita, I just want to share, I saw a posting that actually asked for like a letter of intent and didn't mention a cover letter. And I always thought that like it kind of threw me for a bit because I had never seen that connected to, you know, a position. So I thought that was a bit odd.
I actually have never seen that, so now I'm going to do research on that tonight. So thank you for offering that up, Christina.
Sure. Okay, we have a couple of responses. So someone said, in response to your question on the cover letters, it's how your experience matches the needs of the hiring organization. Someone else shared, show how you stand out that isn't on your resume. Personally, I talk about my bubbly demeanor and how it helps my coworkers.
All of that is good. Yes. These are absolutely things you can add. I am going to actually pull up in my email one of the cover letters I did, and I'm going to read it because I'm looking at the time, and we've got time. So I've just got to find my cover letter. Okay, so pulling it up on my phone because I'm currently sharing my screen. So I'll read you mine and then we'll talk about it. So, dear so and so, my name is Kennita and I'm writing to express interest in blank. So, this is where you can put your job. My work is rooted in supporting Milwaukee based creatives to be seen and heard. That's a tagline from the company that you guys heard at the top of this presentation. When I was 14 years old, it was through writing for different music publications. At age 30, it was serving as a board member and eventual vice president of a music org. Now at 35, it's through platforms I've created under my company Catera, including ... What I found over my career is urban genres lack basic opportunities to perform and promote. And that basic lack of opportunities our rock, Celtic, and blues counterparts have is in part a racial equity issue. While I appreciate the historic venues like Linneman's, Kohansky's, Concertina, and Shank Hall, urban music lacks the equity to create that, or we lack the equity to create that for other genres. This trend is also present when we look at visual artists and other creatives. I go into the bulk of where the bulk of my work resides. So the bulk of my work has been in support of independent musicians. Same supports are necessary for other creatives, including blah, blah, blah. This position requires someone who understands that, someone who's worked within different creative industries and music genres, someone who's sensitive to the nuances and challenges that come with serving a creative industry, and someone who's an avid relationship builder and outward thinker. In me, you'll find someone who's an advocate for Milwaukee creatives. I also love the metrics of determining how effective a project is. Proper goal setting is key for that. And over my 21-year career, I've learned that strategic benchmarks drive success. So I'd be honored to serve Milwaukee and you and our diverse creative community as blah, blah, blah. Being able to help set the blueprint and foundation would be an awesome opportunity, one that I know I'm qualified and ready to take on. And so I offer that up because there are elements of that that meet what one of the folks said on here. So how your experience matches the needs of the hiring org. But it also showed how I stood out. I talked about my 21-year history. I mentioned that I started at 14. And while I didn't specifically talk about my bubbly personality, I did indicate that I enjoyed working. I enjoyed working with people and had been involved in this sector in a while. And I think the tone of my cover letter also had kind of an uplifting component to it as well. So look, cover letters are an opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the employer. I think one thing that we didn't mention is drawing the parallels between that the mission and value statements of that org and how you exhibit that. That's key. Over the years, I've come to understand that employment is really a partnership. And so when I used to teach roadmaps to success for a previous employer, I would liken interviews to the first interview is like a first date, right? You invited me out. I really like fried chicken. So I said, sure, we can go to Popeyes for a first date. That's fantastic. And it's your treat. I'm here for it. First date went great, and so did the chicken. So yeah, I'm into a second date. Let's see where this goes. And so it's really about partnership. So these interviews, these dates are not just an opportunity for the employer to see if you're a good match, but also to see for you to see if you're a good match for that place of employment. Does the culture work for you? Do you feel like you can see yourself waking up every day working towards the mission and the values? For me, I used to approach job search as I really need a job. And so I'm gonna say what I need to get the job. When I started to look for jobs where our values could be a match and where also my skill sets could be a super asset to the organization, completely changed the types of jobs I was applying for. It also decreased the types of jobs I was applying for because everybody wasn't a match. Again, just like dating. And so your cover letter is their first opportunity to really hear you speak. You guys can't see my face, but I'm trying to emphasize hear you, because they're going to hear you when they read that email. Most of the stuff that was in that cover letter is not on the resume. So you don't see when you see me mention the Cranberry Show, B. Alexander, Tape Benders, you have no idea that they are actually 3 different genres. You also don't know what genres they're represented. At this point, I think my whammy experience is too much to include on the resume itself. So cover letter is a place for me to add in that experience too, because that's where the bulk of my experience came from working with multiple music genres. That's how I learned about Wisconsin's incredible music history as it relates to blues and Americana and country music. And the cover letter is the place to do that. Again, I want to reiterate this huge point. Take a moment, look at the mission statement. If you are not embodying the mission statement, if you're not currently living it, that may not be the place for you to work, at least not long term. You might be in a situation where you just need to work somewhere real quick, okay? But that's not going to be the place for you long term. And I've seen that in my personal work experience, but also in like my friends' work experience, right? So cover letter is the opportunity for you to do all of that on one sheet. So someone asked earlier how long resume should be. Your cover letter definitely don't need to be longer than 1 page, including your signature. So no using a whole page to talk about yourself and then signing the second page. No. Everything goes on that 1 page. And if you feeling a little extra, so my current job that I have, and for those of you who know me, and Christina said it at the top of the call, I am the director of artist support and outreach for Imagine MKE. I really wanted that job, y'all, like really bad. So not only did I zhuzh up my resume, and again, I redid that baseline resume, right? I also redid my cover letter, obviously, because I wanted to hit on different talking points. I then sent it to my graphic designer and was like, can you put this in the brand colors of Catera, because I'm gonna send my Catera 1 sheet with this too. It was extra, but sometimes extra works. I wish I could tell y'all about the interview. I brought my laptop and flipped it open into a tablet, and I had a whole PowerPoint prepared. I had never done a PowerPoint for a job in my life, but I just felt like this was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I just had to go hard. I had to go hard or go home. So moving on to the next portion. Yes, graphic designers are a must. So somebody privately sent me that. Graphic designers are a must. Like, especially because, so what I've learned from like Google Docs, at least the last time I used it to create my resume, it was way harder to navigate. So to like move bullet points over and things like that, versus using Microsoft Office. So there's that part. But also, look, when folks are printing out a million papers of interviews and cover letters and trying to get them organized, I think it helps to have something that looks uniform. And I did pay the money to get color copies to bring to the interview so that everybody I was interviewing with had a copy as well. Before I get into the takeaways, because we're at about 6:45, I promised that we would talk about LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is so incredibly important. So for everybody who's on the call, I need you to report to the chat whether you have an active LinkedIn page or not. Go. Do you have an active LinkedIn page right now with a picture that's not a selfie? I need to see who has it, who don't. Okay, so I'm seeing everybody's answers come in. I'm not going to shame anybody. What I will say is my first. So there's this event called the Black Party, and it's a formal event. Usually happens right after Thanksgiving. They usually bring in some like R&B act. So I think the year I went, it was like Black Street or something, but not the original Black Street. It was a Black Street with some new people, and it was like, well, why are they here? Anyways, my first party going out with my homegirl. Okay, somebody said I could shame her, so Flannery is being shamed because Flannery does have a selfie on her LinkedIn page. Um, she's suggested I shame her, and so now all of you and all of the internet, because this is a recorded call, is going to know that Flannery has a selfie. For years, so did I. So I took a selfie at this party, and keep in mind, I am not very technologically advanced. So I took a selfie with my camera. So because I didn't have a camera phone. So I had this little camera. And for those of y'all who remember doing selfies with cameras back in the day, it is really hard to hit that angle. Anyways, that was my picture on LinkedIn for years. Me with my arm out, trying to find good lighting with this camera, and it wasn't great. 4 years ago, um, before the day of the 2016 elections is when I got my headshots back. So it is absolutely a day I will never forget, for a variety of reasons. But I got my headshots. They cost me $75. And those are the pictures you see on all my platforms right now. Me with the big hair and the blue blazer, because I mean business, but I'm also friendly. Yes, that one. All on my LinkedIn, all on my Facebook pages, and on a lot of the marketing pieces that I've created since then. As a matter of fact, it's one of the photos that was used for the online promotion of this event tonight. So look, get a good photo. And you don't have to, I paid $75 for my headshots. If you don't have that type of money right now, again, it's a tough time for all of us. Find a nice clean wall in your house. Have a friend or your partner come over, or if you have a tripod, set it up. Be business on top. So a nice, whatever feels businessy to you. Take your hair out the messy bun or whatever. Take a few photos right there, right? You have on yoga pants underneath. I actually have a friend who put on a blazer and a nice shirt and did have yoga pants on underneath. And it's hilarious because she also had on pearls in that photo, and I would have never guessed that she had on furry house shoes and yoga pants out of the shot. But no one's gonna know. We're talking about a thumbnail, right? Real quick before I turn it over to do takeaways and questions, how many of you are actually posting content on your LinkedIn page? Hit the chat, let me know. Okay, somebody just started, very little. So while folks are reporting in, let me add this. It was so difficult for me to navigate LinkedIn because I just didn't understand what was the point. And Facebook is hard enough to navigate. LinkedIn allows you to be a subject matter expert. Okay. And whatever it is you like to do, right? This is where people are typically going in terms of employment, right? They want to know who you are. If they can find your Facebook, they're going to find it. But they're also looking at your LinkedIn page. They're looking at your LinkedIn profile. So first things first, get a good profile photo. No selfies. Change that tonight or tomorrow. Give yourself some time. Change it by the weekend. Next thing you want to do is you want to add the new bullet points from your resume. So whether you start off creating the chronological first, and then you convert those bullet points you really love into a baseline functional resume, or whether you're starting off with your baseline functional resume and moving over into a chronological, you're then going to use your chronological resume to build that LinkedIn resume. And I encourage you to do that, okay? And keep it as current as possible. The other thing under headline, I was taking this, I was doing some research on LinkedIn and trying to understand what's a good headline. And this company said what they encourage their clients to do is talk about the problem you solve. So when you go to my LinkedIn page, what do you see? I help musicians, creatives, blah, 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 to be seen and heard through brand management and da, da, da. Because that's the first thing you see. When you do a search for me, you're going to see my name, you're going to see my photo, and you're going to see the problem that I solve. So I want to encourage you guys to think about that today as you think through your LinkedIn. I mentioned that it's the opportunity for you to be a subject matter expert. It is. For me, I use it as a space to talk about branding work. I use it as an opportunity to talk about clients that I've worked with. I also use it as an opportunity to amplify the work that other people are doing. So sometimes you don't really have content to post. You can totally share someone else's content. The most important thing to remember about all of this is that these are all branding tools, including LinkedIn. And so you want to make sure that your voice is consistent across all of your platforms, right? So I tell folks LinkedIn is who you want the world to see you as. So when you go to my LinkedIn page, you will not see that I used to, for 4 years, I worked as a barista part-time because I couldn't find a job. I make incredible white chocolate mochas. Like my white chocolate mochas go hard. You will not see that on LinkedIn. You will not see that anywhere because my brand is content creation, media company, and everything needs to be aligned with that. So I'll run through takeaways really quick and then I'll open it up for questions. Actually, if you have questions now, start putting them in the chat and I can start reading through them. So takeaways for today, and I certainly hope that this was helpful for you. And I encourage you all to follow me on LinkedIn, send me a request. I'd be more than happy to keep the conversation going. So resumes and bios, cover letters are all baseline tools. They're important tools in creating your personal and professional culture or brand. Always a work in progress. Again, they're baseline tools. So they're changing as you grow and evolve. Remove jobs that are not relevant to your work. Remember that coffee house I just told you about? I promise you, you won't see it on any resume I have. And that's the job I worked at the longest next to my time at the library. Oh yeah, I used to work at the library. Library was my first job. I was there for 4.5 years. Not the best bookshelver, but I was really good at memorizing my supervisor's footsteps so I know when to get back to my area because, spoiler alert, I was always talking and not in my area. And LinkedIn and resume need to match. So functional, chronological, and your LinkedIn chronological should be sharing all of the same bullet points. It's going to take you some time to work through that. Pace yourself. It's okay. Make sure that final product, though, is that they're consistent across. Because if I'm an employer coming to look at your LinkedIn and you've sent me a functional resume, I need to be able to see the symmetry in both. So that's it. Thank y'all for coming out to my NPL talk. Any questions or comments, learnings you might have that you would like to share with the group? I can certainly read those out.
Yeah, Kennita, there was one sent a little while ago that I'll just read aloud. Someone shared pro tip: if you can't have a designer use PowerPoint to design your resume in a vertical format and then save as a PDF?
So I'm going to be honest. That sounds great. I am not techie enough for that. And that sounds simple, but I'll just be honest. I find the dollars. That just means I can't go to McDonald's and get chicken nuggets for a couple days. That's fine. But thank you so much for offering that feedback. Yes, look, if you're somebody who's like, I'd rather learn how to do it myself, that is certainly an option, and I would encourage you to do that. Yes. So this is actually being recorded. And so, yes, Christina, when will this be available for it to be heard again?
So we should have the recording up on YouTube before the end of the week, most likely Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. So Wednesday, Thursday, you guys will be able to re-listen to it and share it amongst your friends if you like. Any other questions or learnings you'd like to share before we close out our time together and I turn it back over to Christina?
So I'm pretty excited to look at my resume, which I have not updated in a while. So thank you. And make sure you follow Kennita on LinkedIn and keep in touch with the library as well. We miss everyone. All of our programs are virtual right now. But check out our website, mpl.org/stay connected. You can see our web calendar and all of our upcoming programs in the future. So thanks again, everyone, and a huge thank you to
one more question.
Oh, go ahead.
And so this question is, I've only had one job in my field of PT. I'm going to presume that's physical therapy. I could be wrong. I might be wrong. But I've been there for 17 years. What else can I add? So if you're looking to remain in that industry, I would stick with that as the job. But if you've had some promotions in the 17 years, right? And I imagine you have, like if you've moved around to different departments, or if you like, I would include some of that. I would also consider including, you know what? Now that I think about it, you could do that as a chronological, where you have the dates. So the amount of time you've been there, 17 years. And because it's only one job, I would put the full 17 years. And you could put, if you've worked in a different department or things like that, or if you've had a different job title, to kind of show the growth of what you've done to remain there for 17 years. The other thing you could do is consider a functional resume. So the functional resume, as we said earlier, is for folks who have like little to no experience, right? But I think in this instance, it could also be used to broaden out some of those skill sets that you've developed over the 17 years. So maybe it's 3 or 4 major skill sets, and you're going to have those bullet points underneath each of those, right? And then at the bottom, you can put, any volunteer experience, any relevant education, and also include the job, the company itself, and the title and the date. So show that 17-year range. Again, because it's typically, I would not suggest that, but because it's been one job for 17 years, I think you'll have the space to do that within 2 pages. And then something else someone just mentioned might sound funny, but letting go can be hard. Do you have any ideas, rituals for letting go of previous experience that we really loved or are really proud of, but that might not be relevant to future experiences? Oof. If it's not relevant to the work that you're doing, I would just say, like, don't use it, even though you really, really love it. If it's something you just absolutely want to talk about, I might consider throwing it in a cover letter. But I really think that you want your resume to speak specifically to the work that you've done to help you secure that next promotion or next job at that next company. So if it's something you really love, find space for it in a cover letter, or consider a functional resume where you can put it under a skill set that doesn't necessarily tie to a job. Does that make sense? I hope that answered it. Oh, and it's 7 o'clock, so I don't want to keep us and Christina get in trouble.
No, I'm glad people were able to share their questions. So yeah, I mean, thank you everyone. We really appreciate it. Just follow Milwaukee Public Library on social media and on YouTube, and you can see this this recording and some others that we have up there. And have a good evening. So thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.